Matthew Restelli drove most of the night across 2 states to bring his wife and his children home. He believed he was walking into his in-laws' house in Utah to pick up his family. But the people waiting for him had already decided he was not walking back out. And when police arrived, there was a knife in Matthew's hand. The problem, investigators would later testify, was that the knife had been placed there, backward, after he was already dead.
3 family members are under arrest.
The preliminary hearing was held in Provo today for that mother-in-law, Tracey Grist. Natalie Wattis joins us live from the courthouse tonight. Natalie.
Matthew Restelli was 42 years old, and by the summer of 2024, the thing he was fighting for was his children. He lived in California. He was, by the account of the people who loved him, a man who showed up, the kind of person who drove through the night when his family needed him. His marriage to a woman named Kathryn had fallen apart, and the custody of their 2 young kids hung in the balance. But this was not a simple divorce, because the family Matthew had married into was not a simple family, and the more he tried to pull his wife and his children out from under it, the more dangerous he became to the people running it. His mother would later say it plainly, Matthew only wanted to keep his family safe. He was, she said, right to be worried about who they were. At the center of that family was Kathryn's mother, a 61-year-old grandmother from American Fork, Utah, named Tracey Grist. To the outside world, she was a grandmother. To the people closest to her, prosecutors would argue, she was the one who gave the orders, and she had decided that her son-in-law was a problem that needed solving. Here is the first thing the evidence showed, and it is the detail that tells you this was never a moment of panic. It was a plan, weeks in the making. When Matthew set out from California for Utah to bring his family home, he did not know that someone had hidden a small Apple tracking tag in his truck. His in-laws were watching the little dot move across the map the entire way. They were not surprised when he arrived. They were ready for him, and prosecutors would argue the plan was not even original.
You've heard the testimony of this trial, is that right?
Yes.
You've been here throughout all the proceedings.
Yes.
And you've heard the testimony of each and every witness.
They told the jury that what Tracey Grist set in motion was, in their words, a near copy of a notorious case out of Florida, the Donna Adelson case, in which another grandmother had orchestrated the killing of her own son-in-law. A blueprint, the state argued, that Grist had studied and simply followed. A family murder done the way it had been done before.
If she solicits it, if she encourages it, if she helps it to happen. She doesn't have to pull the trigger to be...
On the evening of July 12, 2024, Matthew Restelli pulled up to Tracey Grist's home in American Fork. He thought he was there to collect his kids. Inside that house, his wife's own brother was waiting for him with a gun. His name is Kevin Ellis. He is Tracey Grist's son, and he was Matthew's brother-in-law. Moments after Matthew walked in, Kevin Ellis shot him. And then Tracey Grist picked up the phone and called 911, minutes, investigators noted, after a neighbor had already called to report the gunfire. The family had a story ready too. The story was self-defense. Kevin Ellis's attorney told the jury that Ellis had fired because he feared for his life, that Matthew had come at him with a knife. But the physical evidence would not cooperate with that story. A forensic expert testified that the knife found in Matthew Restelli's hand had been placed there backward, the way a blade ends up when someone presses it into a hand that can no longer grip it, and Matthew had been shot in the wrist. Think about what that means. This was not a man swinging a weapon. This was a body that had been arranged, after death, to look like a threat. The staging was meant to be the end of the story. Instead, it became the thread that unraveled the whole thing. Because the case against Tracey Grist did not rest on the forensics alone, it rested on her own daughter. Kathryn Restelli, Matthew's wife, eventually pleaded guilty to her role, and as part of that deal, she agreed to testify against the rest of her family. And from the witness stand, she described the planning. She testified that the house had been cleaned beforehand, and prosecutors argued the reason was as cold as it sounds, to prepare for what was about to happen in it.
Just keep in mind, we'll let the attorneys finish asking the question before we respond, give direct answers, and give verbal responses, please.
Yes, sir.
Tracey Grist took the stand in her own defense and denied every piece of it. Grist insisted there had been no murder plan at all. She said she had cleaned her house, in her own words, simply because it was a disaster, not because she was preparing for her son-in-law's blood. At sentencing, Grist's attorney told the court she had tried to better herself, enrolling in programs while she sat in jail. The jury did not believe the denial, and the judge, as we are about to hear, did not believe the rest of it either. This is the part that makes the Grist case so unusual. It did not produce one defendant, it produced three from inside one family. Kathryn Restelli, the wife, pleaded guilty and was sentenced. Kevin Ellis, the brother who pulled the trigger, was convicted of murder at his own trial and sentenced in the spring of 2026 to 15 years to life. And in April of 2026, a jury convicted the woman prosecutors called the mastermind, Tracey Grist, of murder, of conspiracy to commit murder, of obstruction of justice, and of 2 counts of domestic violence committed in the presence of a child.
Report that was filed, there were numerous victim impact statements were filed. Of course, I've read those. There was 2.
On June 10, 2026, Tracey Grist stood in a Provo courtroom to learn her sentence, and 4th District Judge Roger Griffin gave her everything the law allowed. He sentenced her to the maximum on every single count, and then he ordered those sentences to run consecutively, stacked, one after another, so that, in his words, he did not believe she would ever leave prison alive. He went further. He said he would put it on the record that, in his view, she should never even be granted a parole hearing.
There were numerous victim impact statements were filed. Of course, I've read those. There was 2 character letters, I believe, that filed on behalf of Ms. Grist. I've read those as well.
Listen to how this judge, who has spent a career in criminal courtrooms, described what she did. He called it one of the most senseless crimes he had ever seen, as an attorney or as a judge. He said that a grandmother is supposed to protect her grandchildren, and he called it incomprehensible that, rather than simply counseling her daughter to get a divorce, Tracey Grist helped arrange a killing. "You are clearly the mastermind," he told her, "of a plot that led to your son-in-law's death, a man who simply thought he was coming to Utah to pick up his wife and children." And through all of it, Tracey Grist said nothing. She declined to make any statement at her own sentencing. The people who did speak were Matthew's family. His mother, Kathryn Restelli, told the court that Grist had lured her son in and trapped him, in her words, like an animal. She
Just briefly, keep on coming as a seat. I'll give you some instructions. Please wait for the attorneys to finish asking the questions.
said Grist had wanted Matthew dead for a simple, chilling reason, because he knew exactly who she was, and he would not bow down to her. His younger brother, Jonathan, called Grist the demon at the center of it all. The root, he said, of the poisonous tree. He told the courtroom he did not want to be there, but that his brother's voice had been permanently silenced, and someone had to speak for him. And consider what Kathryn Restelli is carrying now, because it is the truest measure of this crime. He has taken custody of his brother's 2 children, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Their father is dead. Their mother is in prison for conspiring in his death. Their grandmother engineered it. "You stole every birthday," Jonathan told Grist in that courtroom. "Every Christmas morning, every fishing trip, every graduation, every father-daughter dance, every hug, every I love you. Here is what I keep coming back to. Most murders are a single terrible decision made by a single person in a single moment. This one was different. This one required a family to agree. It required a mother to look at her own son and her own daughter and decide, together, that the man one of them had married was worth more to them dead than divorced. The knife placed backward in Matthew's hand was supposed to be the last word, the tidy story that closed the case. Instead, it was the first thing that gave them away. Matthew Restelli drove across 2 states because he was afraid for his children. He turned out to be right to be afraid, and he paid for being right with his life. He was 42 years old. His kids will grow up on the strength of an uncle who showed up for them because the rest of that family chose not to. I am Carson Morgan. Until next time, Stay curious and stay safe.